Hi there, I'm John from CNCKing.com, and today we'll review these engravings. Now what you see here is the darker ones. That's done with a laser. So the advantage of a laser, right off the bat, you can actually see it. It creates charcoal, and as a result you get the contrast right away. It looks a little bit muddy, and the reason for that is because there's still all the smoke from the laser engraving on the surface. The customer will be sanding this clean, and then you have a nice clean result, and they'll also be doing black epoxy filling, not just on the laser, but also on the larger engraving here. This one here is done with a CNC router. The table itself is a little bit more than 4 by 8 feet, so it's a big heavy table. It's I think 1 3/4 inches thick, so it's really big, really heavy, and of course it's laminated, so you have all that extra glue and stuff in there. The advantage of having the glue in there is that it helps maintain the dimensional stability of it, because it adds sort of like a brake. So if it wants to warp a little bit here, a little bit there, it can't really warp because the pieces are small, and it sort of just breaks them up. So even if they want to warp this way or this way, there's no long straight piece that will cause the warping. So it makes it a lot heavier because you have glue, and you also have a lot more stability. Now here the carving is done with 3 series of bits. The first bit I use is 1/2 inch, and then that's just to do the larger areas. After that I go over it with a 1/4 inch bit, 1/4 inch diameter bit, and that gets more areas. And then I use a 1/8 bit to refine the whole design. Now when it comes to CNC routering, the reason why I do that is because if I did the whole thing with a 1/8 bit, I can only go at a maximum the diameter of the bit, which is 1/8. But I have to be a 1/4 inch deep, and the 1/8 bit is moving really, really slow. 1/8 bit is 1/8 diameter, but to give you an idea, if you're going through material, it wants to deflect because it's so thin, so to speak. The 1/2 inch bit, it's solid, right? So what you want to do is work your way down. So the 1/2 inch bit carves a lot of the stuff out. It could do a 1/4 inch one pass, no problem at all. So that's what it did. And then when I go over it with a 1/4 inch bit from the 1/2 inch bit, that's where you get a lot more detail in it. So that's where having a large design like this, which is 36 inches square, roughly, really helps a lot. So again, the 1/4 inch bit can go, no problem, 1/4 inch deep. So you can go, technically you go more than the diameter of the bit, but you certainly get too much bit deflection. And the problem with that is that the bit will break. And then you gotta, set up the bit, take out the bit, put a new one in, re-zero it. It's just a pain. So you don't want to deal with that. And the 1/8, and another thing to keep in mind is as you get the diameter of the bit lower, so from 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch, you're going exponentially slower as well. Because again, the bit is not as strong, so it can't take the forces, the shear forces, pushing and pulling and all that kind of stuff into it. So it took dramatically a lot more time to go through all of this with the 1/8 bit than it did with the 1/2 inch bit. Now you might think just carving out maple tables is a very straightforward process, and actually it is and it isn't. Where it's straightforward is the customer sends you the design file, and for this type of work, if it's just going to be 2D like this, meaning there's 2 depth layers, so that you have the surface of the table, then you have the depth, which is in this case here a 1/4 inch. When you're doing this kind of work, you have to make sure that it's black and white. Now, if it's grayscale, the problem is the router, specifically in this case here, I would actually do a 3D sort of look and feel to it. The problem is if you're doing an epoxy fill, if you have sort of filled and not filled and different layers of fill, it tends to muddy out the picture, especially for something this large here. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm just saying it kind of muddies out the overall picture. So, like for laser, you want black and white imagery for the best optimal result, for the sharpest contrast of what you're doing. Now, when it comes to the design itself, it can literally be anything. But you have to keep in mind, the larger the picture is, the better the resolution you get with a CNC router. And that is down to the resolution of the bit. Now, yes, I could use technically a 1/32 bit, but I don't want to take 100 years to do this table. And the customer probably doesn't have a couple $1 million laying around for me to spend 100 years doing this table. So that's why you see the staggered approach that I take. Now, every bit that I go down is an exponentially longer routering time when it comes to doing router and carving into wood. Now, when it comes to softwood or hardwoods, this is a hardwood, it's maple, but it's also glued maple, which makes it even harder. The grain is very tight on this, so I can't really go full bore at 1,000 inches a minute. That'd break the bit almost immediately. And again, as the bit gets smaller, I have to go slower because otherwise this hard table would just shatter the bit immediately. Now, by contrast, when it comes to doing laser, this kind of work here, it's exactly the same thing. You want black and white imagery. Again, they're gonna do an epoxy fill. So you wanna make sure that you have as sharp a contrast as you can for the finished product. The advantage of the laser is, as you can see, you see the contrast. So that means if the customer wants, they can do a black epoxy or they can do a clear coat epoxy and fill it out. And it'll give a lot more detail, I think, to the overall table. But again, you got to think about it. These are all tables that are going in the same room. Do you want some mix and match of the final contrast for the carving, or do you want them all to be the same? So in this case here, the customer will be doing black epoxy on these small side tables and black epoxy on the full CNC router tables. These tables are really, really heavy. So when it comes to the finished product, they have to keep that in mind for the bases. You notice that with the bits, I'm going down and it's taking a lot of time. I don't have that issue with the laser, which is why these ones here are done. Those are 8-inch diameter, roughly. And with the laser, I have basically infinite resolution. So as I go through it, I'm carving out depth all the way through. So that's why you'll notice that on the video, I'm going 3 passes because I want to get a little bit more than 1/8, but a little bit less than 1/4 inch. And again, it just comes down to time, and they're going to do the epoxy filling anyways, but I have to give some time, I have to give some surface area sort of give to the customer so that when they sand it, they're not sanding off the engraving, because then they got to bring it back and I got to carve it all over again, which is just a mess because I'll never get the carving at the same spot. Now, the nice thing about the router is that it's an absolute positioning system, which means that I could shut everything down, or if I have power failure, start everything up again, and everything will be exactly the same spot. Now, the caveat to that is I don't touch this. Same thing with the laser. It's an absolute positioning. So everything shuts down, everything starts back again. It zeroes everything perfectly, so I could just continue where these left off. But again, the caveat is I don't touch these things, because as soon as I touch it anywhere, I've created some error, and I will never ever get it at exactly the same spot, to the microns. And what will happen is, whether you're carving out or you're laser engraving, you'll see like a little step that's offset throughout the whole design. And there's no way around that. Of course, I don't have that problem here because I sort of know what I'm doing. But I've had that happen way in the past when I was learning how to do this stuff. And I thought I was smarter than the machine, and I'm not. So if you're looking for custom carving, contact me at CNCKing.com. We can make it for you and ship it right to your door.